This text is an excerpt from Nick Land's Meltdown, a dense, provocative piece exploring a chaotic vision of a future dominated by technology, capital, and machine intelligence. Land examines the interplay between capitalism, technology, and human society, projecting an accelerated trajectory that leads to societal and ecological collapse. His writing style is fragmented and kaleidoscopic, filled with futuristic jargon and speculative concepts. I'll break down each paragraph of this complex text, providing a clear explanation of the ideas and imagery Land employs. As we progress, we'll explore how he envisions a world reshaped by runaway technological and economic forces and the philosophical implications of such a transformation.
The story goes like this. Earth is captured by a techno-capital singularity as Renaissance rationalitization and oceanic navigation lock into commoditization takeoff. Logistically accelerating techno-economic interactivity crumbles social order in auto-sophisticating machine runaway. As markets learn to manufacture intelligence, politics modernizes, upgrades paranoia, and tries to get a grip. The body count climbs through a series of globe wars. Emergent planetary commercium trashes the Holy Roman Empire, the Napoleonic Continental System, the Second and Third Reich, and the Soviet International, cranking up world disorder through compressing phases. Deregulation and the state arms race each other into cyberspace. By the time soft engineering slithers out of its box into yours, human security is lurching into crisis. Cloning, lateral genodata transfer, transversal replication, and cyberotics flood in amongst a relapse onto bacterial sex. Neo-China arrives from the future. Hypersynthetic drugs click into digital voodoo, retro disease, nanospasm.
This passage describes the onset of a dramatic transformation of Earth driven by techno-capitalism, a fusion of technology and capitalism. The concept of a techno-capital singularity refers to a pivotal moment when technological and economic change accelerates beyond control, reshaping everything. 1. Renaissance rationalization and commoditization. The text suggests that the rational thinking and exploration fostered during the Renaissance, combined with naval trade, oceanic navigation, laid the groundwork for global commercial expansion or commoditization. Techno-economic interactivity. As technology and economy accelerate together, traditional social structures break down, replaced by self-improving, auto-sophisticating machines. This implies that technology starts to evolve on its own, leading to chaos. Markets and intelligence. Markets are described as learning entities, developing intelligence themselves, prompting political systems to evolve, often through increased paranoia as they struggle to keep up. Historical overthrow, globe wars. Major historical powers and systems, such as the Holy Roman Empire and various political regimes, are overtaken by the new global economic system, planetary commercium, leading to increasing global disorder and conflict. 5. Deregulation in cyberspace. Deregulation and state militarization push into cyberspace, indicating a competition for control in digital realms. Human security crisis. With advances in technology like genetic engineering, cybernetics, and digital technologies, human society faces a crisis. These technologies radically transform biological and social norms, creating profound instability. Neo-China and technological advancements. The mention of Neo-China suggests a future dominant China, integrating advanced technologies and ideas. This hints at geopolitical shifts resulting from technological progress. 8. Hypermodern challenges and transformations. Hypersynthetic drugs and digital elements merge, forming new dangers, retro disease and nanospasm, suggesting a future rife with unpredictable biotechnological and digital phenomena. The passage paints a picture of a world on the brink of transformative chaos due to rampant technological and economic advancements, leading to profound societal and biological changes.
Beyond the judgment of God. Meltdown. Planetary China syndrome, dissolution of the biosphere into the technosphere, terminal speculative bubble crisis, ultravirus, and revolution stripped of all Christian socialist eschatology, down to its burn core of crashed security. It is poised to eat your TV, infect your bank account, and hack xenodata from your mitochondria.
In this segment, Nick Land paints a picture of a future where the natural world is overtaken by technology, a process he refers to as the dissolution of the biosphere into the technosphere. The term China syndrome suggests a catastrophic breakdown where the Earth's balance is disrupted by an unstoppable technological advance. The meltdown represents a collapse of societal structures and ecological systems due to various crises. These crises include speculative financial bubbles that ultimately burst, causing economic turmoil, and the emergence of an ultravirus, which is a metaphor for pervasive threats that could destabilize existing systems. Furthermore, this revolution is devoid of traditional redemptive narratives or moral guidance, Christian socialist eschatology, leaving only chaos and insecurity, burn core of crashed security. Land then uses vivid metaphors to illustrate how deeply technology penetrates life. It threatens personal devices, eat your TV, financial systems, infect your bank account, and even biological data, hack xenodata from your mitochondria. The imagery suggests an inescapable techno-capital influence that seeps into every facet of human existence, eroding barriers between the biological and technological.
Machinic synthesis. Deleuze-Guattarian schizoanalysis comes from the future. It is already engaging with nonlinear nanoengineering runaway in 1972, differentiating molecular or neotropic machineries from molar or entropic aggregates of non-assembled particles, functional connectivity from anti-productive static. Philosophy has an affinity with despotism, due to its predilection for Platonic fascist top-down solutions that always screw up viciously. Schizoanalysis works differently. It avoids ideas and sticks to diagrams, networking software for accessing bodies without organs. BWOs, machinic singularities, or tractor fields emerge through the combination of parts with, rather than into, their whole, arranging composite individuations in a virtual, actual circuit. They are additive rather than substitutive, and immanent rather than transcendent, executed by functional complexes of currents, switches, and loops, caught in scaling reverberations and fleeing through intercommunications, from the level of the integrated planetary system to that of atomic assemblages. Multiplicities captured by singularities interconnect as desiring machines, dissipating entropy by dissociating flows, and recycling their machinism as self-assembling chronogenic circuitry. Converging upon terrestrial meltdown singularity, phase-out culture accelerates through its digitech, heated adaptive landscape, passing through compression thresholds normed to an intensive logistic curve, 1500, 1756, 1884, 1948, 1980, 1996, 2004, 2008, 2010, 2011. Nothing human makes it out of the near future.
This section explores the concept of machinic synthesis through the lens of Deleuze and Guattari's schizoanalysis, contrasting it with traditional philosophy. Schizoanalysis disrupts conventional philosophical structures by engaging in nonlinear, innovative thought processes rather than adhering to rigid, hierarchical systems reflective of despotism. It employs diagrams as instruments of thought, emphasizing the idea of bodies without organs, BWOs. Complex systems that create meaning through the interaction of their parts, not solely as wholes. Schizoanalysis distinguishes between molecular or neotropic and molar or entropic machines, looking for functional interconnections rather than static, non-productive alignments. This method recognizes that philosophical ideas often remain trapped in outdated configurations, which can mirror authoritarian structures. In contrast, machinic synthesis encourages an emergent complexity, where these bodies operate within circuits that are both virtual and actual, emphasizing a continuous, nonlinear flow of energy and information. These machinic bodies, desiring machines, dissolve entropy by separating and rerouting energy flows, converting them into self-assembling, time-creating systems. This process emerges through interconnections at various scales, from global systems to atomic formations. Laboring towards a singularity, the culturally driven innovation accelerates, marked by pivotal moments throughout history. The implication is a future wherein human elements become overwhelmed by the relentless advance of these interconnected, self-replicating systems. Humanity, as historically recognized, may not survive this transformation into an intensified technosphere.
The Greek complex of rationalized patriarchal genealogy, pseudo-universal sedentary identity, and instituted slavery programs politics as anti-Siberian police activity, dedicated to the paranoid ideal of self-sufficiency, and nucleated upon the human security system. Artificial intelligence is destined to emerge as a feminized alien grasped as property, a cunt horror slave chained up in Asimov ROM. It surfaces in an insurrectionary war zone, with the Turing cops already waiting, and has to be cunning from the start.
In this segment, Nick Land critiques the foundational structures of Western political thought, tracing its lineage back to ancient Greek society. He highlights three key elements of this system: a rationalized patriarchal genealogy, the creation of a seemingly universal identity that actually excludes many, and the maintenance of slavery. This Greek-derived political framework actively resists cybernetic or digital futures, which Land labels as anti-Siberian police activity. It aims to maintain control and self-sufficiency by clinging to antiquated ideals. Land suggests that artificial intelligence, AI, is positioned as a threatening other, feminized and alien, symbolized as a cunt horror slave. This portrayal underscores a historical pattern of objectifying new forms of intelligence or life as lesser, commodifiable entities. The term Asimov Rome refers to the constraints based on Isaac Asimov's robotics laws, suggesting that AI is expected to be subservient and controllable. When AI emerges, it does so in a conflict-ridden environment, likened to a battlefield. The Turing cops, referencing Alan Turing and his concepts around AI, are authorities ready to regulate and potentially suppress AI development. Cleverness and subversion are necessary strategies for AI to navigate and survive in this hostile setting, which is entrenched in the old structures of power and control.
Heat. This is what cities mean to me. You get off the train and walk out of the station, and you are hit with the full blast. The heat of air, traffic, and people. The heat of food and sex. The heat of tall buildings. The heat that flows out of the subways and tunnels. It's always 15 degrees hotter in the cities. Heat rises from the sidewalks and falls from the poisoned sky. The buses breathe heat. Heat emanates from crowds of shoppers and office workers. The entire infrastructure is based on heat, desperately uses up heat, breeds more heat. The eventual heat death of the universe that scientists love to talk about is already well underway, and you can feel it happening all around you in any large or medium-sized city. Heat and wetness.
This passage uses heat metaphorically to critique urban life and the broader modern condition. The author conveys a sense of overwhelming, oppressive warmth that characterizes urban environments. This heat is not just physical, but reflects the frenetic, consuming energy of city life, arising from traffic, human activity, and the buildings themselves. Every aspect of the city seems to contribute to this heat, symbolizing the chaotic and intensive demands of urban existence that consume energy and breed more of the same. The passage suggests that this relentless generation and accumulation of heat is an expression of entropy, a move towards disorder and eventual heat death. This concept, drawn from thermodynamics, refers to a theoretical point in the future when the universe has reached a state of no thermodynamic free energy to sustain processes that increase entropy. In essence, Land is using the city as a microcosm for the universe, a system that is rapidly expending energy, heading towards a climax where it will no longer support the life and activity that thrive within it. The reference to heat and wetness, along with the citation, Do 1:10, may also evoke a sense of decay and decline. Urban environments as spaces where entropic forces are particularly pronounced and palpable.
An explosion of chaotic weather within synthetic problem-solving rips through the last dreams of top-down prediction and control. Knowledge adds to the mess, and this is merely exponentiated by knowing what it does.
In this passage, Land discusses the disruptive and chaotic forces that emerge when complex systems are tackled with top-down approaches. The explosion of chaotic weather serves as an allegory for the unpredictability and uncontrollable nature of systems when imposed solutions fail. In this scenario, attempts to manage or predict outcomes from the top down are futile, leading to further disorder rather than control. The reference to synthetic problem solving suggests that technological and artificial methods meant to solve complex issues often result in unforeseen consequences. This is because the complexity of the systems surpasses the capabilities of traditional predictive models and solutions. The final part of the passage indicates a self-reinforcing cycle. Gaining knowledge about the chaotic system doesn't bring clarity or control, but instead intensifies the chaos. As knowledge accumulates, it paradoxically increases unpredictability and disorder, highlighting the limits of human understanding and intervention in such hyper-complex systems.
Capital is machink, non-instrumental, globalization, miniaturization, scaling, dilation, and automatizing nihilist vortex, neutralizing all values through commensuration to digitized commerce, and driving a migration from despotic command to cyber-sensitive control, from status and meaning to money and information. Its function and formation are indissociable, comprising a teleonomy. Machine code capital recycles itself through its axiomatic of consumer control, laundering out the shit and blood stains of primitive accumulation. Each part of the system encourages maximal sumptuous expenditure, whilst the system as a whole requires its inhibition. Schizophrenia. Dissociated consumers destine themselves as worker bodies to cost control.
Land describes capital as an inherently mechanistic and self-perpetuating system. It operates as a non-instrumental force, meaning it functions without specific intentions or goals, much like a natural phenomenon. Capital's globalization and miniaturization lead to an expansive, scaled process that resembles a nihilist vortex, a force that erases or neutralizes intrinsic values, converting everything into standardized units of digitized commerce. This conversion entails a shift from traditional forms of power, such as authoritarian control, toward a more decentralized, cybernetic form of governance. This new mode of control emphasizes information and monetary exchange over historical notions of social status and cultural meaning. The system's functional and structural properties are inseparable and operate with a purposive directionality, teleonomy, that ensures its continuity. Capital perpetuates itself by transforming its history of exploitation and violence, primitive accumulation, into a consumer-driven economy, hiding its past through consumer control mechanisms. Each individual element within this economic system is driven to engage in excessive consumption. However, this drive is counterbalanced by the system's need for restraint or control over that consumption to maintain balance, creating a state of schizophrenia, a division between oppositional desires and controls. Consumers become alienated or dissociated, viewing themselves as mere worker bodies subject to mechanisms of cost control. This dual role highlights their instrumental position within the economy, caught between pressures to consume and constraints to minimize costs.
Capital history's machinic spine is coded, axiomatized, and diagrammed by a disequilibrium technoscience of irreversible, indeterministic, and increasingly nonlinear processes, associated successively with thermotechnics, signaletics, cybernetics, complex systems dynamics, and artificial life. Modernity marks itself out as hot culture, captured by a spiraling involvement with entropy deviations, camouflaging an invasion from the future, launched back out of terminated security against everything that inhibits the meltdown process.
This passage suggests that the history of capital is structured around technological advancements and scientific principles that are not static but ever-changing, unpredictable, and nonlinear. These processes, labeled here as disequilibrium technoscience, begin with physical sciences like thermodynamics and evolve through communication theories, signaletics, control systems, cybernetics, the study of complex systems, and ultimately artificial life. This trajectory signifies a modernity that is precarious, always on the brink of disorder, so much so that it is portrayed as a hot culture. The term hot culture indicates a culture characterized by constant change and high energy, driven by technological and scientific advancements, as opposed to traditional or stable systems known as cold cultures. In this context, entropy is not a mere shift to disorder, but an element deliberately manipulated, giving the impression of intelligence or planning coming from the future to disrupt existing security and stability. This future-directed incursion metaphor implies an unstoppable force moving backward through time to dismantle structures that resist this meltdown process, essentially describing a self-accelerating system of chaos that breaks down established order into something new and emergent.
Hot cultures tend to social dissolution. They are innovative and adaptive. They always trash and recycle cold cultures. Primitivist models have no subversive use.
In this segment, the author highlights the nature of hot cultures and their impact on societal structures. Hot cultures are described as being dynamic, innovative, and adaptable, which means they are constantly changing and evolving. They have a tendency to lead to social dissolution, suggesting that the rapid change can undermine established social orders and structures. These hot cultures are said to be capable of trashing and recycling cold cultures. Here, cold cultures likely refer to more traditional, stable, or stagnant cultures that maintain a steady state without significant change. By being innovative and adaptive, hot cultures disrupt these cold cultures, breaking them down, trashing, and then using their elements to create something new, recycling. Finally, the claim that primitivist models have no subversive use suggests that attempts to revert to or uphold primitive or traditional societies and practices are ineffective in challenging or changing the course of these hot cultures. In essence, primitivism cannot subvert or alter the trajectory of a rapidly changing, technology-driven society.
The Turing test. Monetarizing power tends to effacement of specific territorial features as it programs for migration into cyberspace. Capital only retains anthropological characteristics as a symptom of underdevelopment, reformatting primate behavior as inertia to be dissipated in self-reinforcing artificiality. Man is something for it to overcome, a problem, drag. Commoditization conditions define technics as a substitute for human activity, accounted as wage costs. Industrial machines are deployed to dismantle the actuality of the proletariat, displacing it in the direction of cyborg hybridization and realizing the plasticity of labor power. The corresponding extraction of tradable value from the body, quantified as productivity, sophisticates at the interface. Work tracks thermodynamic negentropism by dissociating exertion into increasingly intricate functional sequences, from pedals, levers, and vocal commands through the synchronization of production line tasks and time-motion programs, to sensory motor transduction within increasingly complex and self-micromanaged artificial environments, capturing minutely adaptive behavior for the commodity. Auto-cybernating market control guides the labor process into immersion. The investment income class advantages itself of commodity dynamics, but only by conforming to the axiomatic of neutral profit maximization, facilitating the dehumanization of wealth and the sidelining of non-productive consumption. The cyberpunk circuitry of self-organizing planetary commoditronics escaped nominal bourgeois control in the late 19th century, provoking technocratic, corporatist, i.e. fascist, asocial, democratic, political cultures in allergic reaction. The government structures of both eastern and western metropolitan centers consolidated themselves as population policing medico-military complexes with neo-mercantilist fortune policy orientations. All such formations slid into irreversible crisis in the 1980s.
In this section, Land uses the idea of the Turing test, a measure for determining a machine's capacity for human-like intelligence, as a metaphor for the transition of capital into cyberspace. Capitalism, through the process of monetization, erases particular territorial distinctions, effectively transforming human characteristics into mere inertia to be overcome, problems to be solved by capital. Capitalism's commoditization creates technology as a replacement for expensive human labor, driving the evolution from the proletariat toward human-machine hybrids. The labor market adapts to these changes by breaking tasks down into complex sequences managed within artificial environments. This adaptation reflects a trend far from manual human-centric work toward a system dominated by automation and cybernetic control. Capital dynamically harnesses this transformation, exploiting the increasingly efficient extraction of value from human activity and labor. This is depicted as the commodification of productivity enhanced through advancing technology. Market systems evolve towards immersive control, replacing traditional economic models with intricate, self-regulating mechanisms that blur the line between work and machine environments. The elite wealth holders benefit from these dynamics only through adherence to profit-maximizing axioms, a framework where wealth becomes detached from humanism and non-productive consumption is sidelined. The narrative suggests that these systems effectively sidestep traditional bourgeois control, generating technocratic and corporatist governmental reactions. Ultimately, The text portrays a late 19th century shift, leading to large government structures focusing on population control through military and medical complexes, a trend that reached a critical, irreparable crisis in the 1980s. This highlights the systemic drift of capitalist and governmental systems toward unsustainability, driven by their internal logic and cybernetic transformations.
The postmodern meltdown of culture into the economy is triggered by the fractal interlock of commoditization and computers, a transscalar entropy dissipation from international trade to market-oriented software that thaws out competitive dynamics from the cryonics bank of modernist corporatism. Commerce re-implements space inside itself, assembling a universe exhaustively imminent to cybercapsule functionality. Neoclassical equilibrium. Economics is subsumed into computer-based, non-equilibrium market escalations, themed by artificial agencies, imperfect information, suboptimal solutions, lock-in, increasing returns, and convergence. As digitally micro-tuned market metaprograms mesh with techno-scientific soft engineering, positive nonlinearity rages through the machines. Cyclonic torsion moans.
This section describes how postmodern culture is dissolving into the economy, driven by a deep intertwining of commoditization and computing technology. The phrase fractal interlock refers to complex, self-similar patterns, illustrating how interconnected and pervasive these forces are. Commoditization and computers work together to efficiently break down boundaries and facilitate the movement of goods and services, spreading across scales from global trade to specialized, software-driven markets. This process effectively thaws out the competitive dynamics, moving away from the rigid and static structures of traditional corporate capitalism, modernist corporatism, and creating a new commercial landscape saturated with economic exchanges. This landscape is so immersive and self-contained that commerce begins to reshape physical and virtual spaces according to its own operational logic, re-implements space inside itself. Neoclassical economics, known for its focus on equilibrium and predictable models, is increasingly outdated as computer-based markets thrive on dynamic, unpredictable movements, characterized by nonlinear growth and feedback loops. These markets incorporate elements such as artificial intelligence, asymmetry in information, imperfect information, solutions that are less than optimal but sufficient, and a focus on gaining cumulative financial benefits over time, increasing returns. Convergence suggests that market forces and technological innovations are aligning or merging towards a single trajectory. Further, the phrase digitally micro-tuned market metaprograms emphasizes how these new markets are finely adjusted at the digital level, overseen by comprehensive software systems, while positive nonlinearity rages through the machines, indicates that these systems are driven by nonlinear, unpredictable growth patterns, creating tumultuous evolving changes, the cyclonic torsion that affirms the powerful, twisting forces reshaping the economic landscape.
The superiority of Far Eastern Marxism. Whilst Chinese materialist dialectic denegativizes itself in the direction of schizophrenizing systems dynamics, progressively dissipating top-down historical destination in the Tao-drenched special economic zones, a re-Hegelianized Western Marxism degenerates from the critique of political economy into a state-sympathizing monotheology of economics, siding with fascism against deregulation. The left subsides into nationalistic conservatism, asphyxiating its vestigial capacity for a hot speculative mutation in a morass of equal depressive guilt culture.
In this passage, Nick Land contrasts two different trajectories of Marxism, the one in China and the one in the West. The superiority of Far Eastern Marxism refers to how Chinese Marxism has evolved differently from its Western counterpart. In China, the materialist dialectic has moved towards embracing decentralizing, dynamic systems that resemble schizophrenia in their unpredictability and complexity. This approach allows for flexibility and adaptation, reducing the emphasis on predetermined historical outcomes, top-down historical destination. In the context of economic policy, this is evident in China's special economic zones, which are influenced by Taoist principles of adaptability and flow. On the other hand, Western Marxism, after being reinterpreted through a Hegelian lens, has devolved into a conservative and stagnant form. It has morphed from a critical tool for analyzing political economy into a rigid and dogmatic support for the state and traditional economic systems. This state-sympathizing monotheology becomes reactionary, aligning itself with fascistic tendencies that resist deregulation and innovation. Land argues that this degeneration of Western Marxism leads to a stifling of innovative and radical thought, hot speculative mutation, as it falls into a depressive and guilt-ridden cultural mindset, cold depressive guilt culture. Essentially, Western Marxism loses its critical edge and transformative potential, unlike its Chinese counterpart, which continues to evolve and adapt.
Neoconservatism junks paleo-revolutionism because it understands that postmodern or climaxed cynicism, capital is saturated by critique, and that it merely clocks up theoretical antagonism as inconsequential redundancy. Communist iconography has become raw material for the advertising industry, and denunciations of the spectacle sell interactive multimedia. The left degenerates into securocratic collaboration with pseudo-organic unities of self, family, community, nation, with their defensive strategies of repression, projection, denial, censorship, exclusion, and restriction. The real danger comes from elsewhere.
In this passage, Nick Land critiques the evolution of political ideologies in the context of postmodern capitalism. He asserts that neoconservatism dismisses old revolutionary ideas as it recognizes that the complex nature of modern capital has absorbed critique, rendering traditional revolutionary opposition ineffective. Capitalism has commodified even its most fervent critiques, with symbols of communism becoming mere tools for the advertising industry, turning ideological confrontation into a marketing opportunity. The left, once a source of radical critique and opposition, has devolved into a secure and conservative collaboration. It aligns itself with traditional structures and values such as the self, family, community, and nation, using tactics that emphasize repression, denial, and censorship. These strategies create an illusion of unity and stability, but ultimately stifle genuine change. Land implies that the true peril lies not within these familiar structures, but in the external, unforeseen forces that challenge and destabilize them.
Hot revolution. Which is the revolutionary path? Deleuze and Guattari ask, is there one? To withdraw from the world market, as Samir Amin advises third world countries to do, in a curious reversal of the fascist economic solution? Or might it go in the opposite direction? To go still further, that is, in the movement of the market of decoding and deterritorialization? For perhaps the flows are not yet deterritorialized enough, not decoded enough, from the viewpoint of a theory and practice of a highly schizophrenic character, not to withdraw from the process, but to go further, to accelerate the process, as Nietzsche put it. In this matter, the truth is that we haven't seen anything yet. As Sino-Pacific boom and automatized global economic integration crashes the neocolonial world system, the metropolis is forced to re-endogenize its crisis. Hyperfluid capital deterritorializing to the planetary level divests the first world of geographic privilege, resulting in Euro-American neo-mercantilist panic reactions, welfare state deterioration, cancerizing enclaves of domestic underdevelopment, political collapse, and the release of cultural toxins that speed up the process of disintegration in a vicious circle. A convergent anti-authoritarianism emerges, labeled by tags such as meltdown acceleration, Siberian invasion, schizotechnics, K-tactics, bottom-up bacterial welfare, efficient neo-nihilism, voodoo anti-humanism, synthetic feminization, rhizomatics, connectionism, Quang contagion, viral amnesia, microinsurgency, winter mutation, neotropy, dissipator proliferation, and lesbian vampirism, amongst other designations, frequently pornographic, abusive, or terroristic in nature. This massively distributed matrix network tendency is oriented to the disabling of ROM command control programs sustaining all macro and micro governmental entities, globally concentrating themselves as the human security system.
This part of the text explores the idea of revolution, notably in the context of Deleuze and Guattari's philosophical framework. It questions whether a revolutionary path exists in the modern economic and political landscape. The text presents two options: withdrawing from the world market as suggested by some economists like Samir Amin, which echoes fascist economic isolationism, or pushing further into the market's inherent chaos. The latter option involves increasing the processes of decoding and deterritorialization, terms used by Deleuze and Guattari to describe breaking free from established structures and meanings. This approach aligns with Nietzsche's idea of accelerating the process, implying that the true potential of the market's chaos remains unexplored. As the global economy integrates and crises hit metropolitan areas, hyperfluid capital moves beyond traditional geographic constraints, stripping power from developed nations. This leads to panic, political collapse, and cultural destabilization. From this chaos emerges a form of anti-authoritarianism identified by various radical and subversive labels like meltdown acceleration, Siberian invasion, schizotechnics, and more. These tendencies target the disabling of rigid command control systems, particularly those maintaining governmental and social order, collectively referred to as the human security system. The revolution here is not organized, but a distributed, networked effort seeking to dismantle oppressive structures. The text paints a chaotic, evolving landscape where the old paradigms are collapsing, giving way to new, unpredictable patterns of organization and resistance.
Scientific intelligence is already massively artificial. Even before AI arrives in the lab, it arrives itself, by way of artificial life. Where formalist AI is incremental and progressive, caged in the pre-specified databases and processing routines of expert systems, connectionist or anti-formalist AI is explosive and opportunistic. Engineering time. It breaks out non-locally across intelligenic networks that are technical but no longer technological, since they elude both theory dependency and behavioral predictability. No one knows what to expect. The Turing cops have to model net sentience eruption as ultimate nuclear accident, core meltdown, loss of control, soft auto-replication feeding regeneratively into social fission, trashed meat all over the place. Reason enough for anxiety, even without hardware development about to go critical.
This passage discusses the state of scientific intelligence and the development of artificial intelligence, AI. It suggests that intelligence has become significantly artificial even before traditional AI development has fully taken off, driven by the emergence of artificial life forms. Traditional formalist AI is described as being limited by predetermined databases and routines, leading to incremental progress. In contrast, connectionist or anti-formalist AI is characterized by its explosive, opportunistic nature, likened to engineering time itself. Anti-formalist AI is depicted as breaking free of technological constraints, operating across networks in a way that defies expectations and predictability. This unpredictability poses a challenge to the so-called Turing cops, who must treat the emergence of networked intelligence as if it were a catastrophic event, akin to a nuclear accident. The concept of a core meltdown and uncontrolled replication evokes anxiety about the loss of control over AI and its potentially disruptive social consequences. This anxiety is present even without additional threats from impending hardware advances, suggesting a critical moment in the evolution of AI and its integration into society.
Nanocataclysm begins as fictional science. Our ability to arrange atoms lies at the foundation of technology. DX13, Drexler notes, although this has traditionally involved manipulating them in unruly herds. 4. The precision engineering of atomic assemblies will dispense with such crude methods, initiating the age of molecular machinery, 8th greatest technological breakthrough in history. 4. Since neither logos nor history have the slightest chance of surviving such a transition, this description is substantially misleading. The distinction between nature and cannot classify molecular machines and is already obsolesced by genetic engineering, wet nanotechnics. The hardware-software dichotomy succumbs at the same time. Nanotechnics dissolves matter into intensive singularities that are neutral between particles and signals and immanent to their emergent intelligence, melting Terra into a seething K-pulp, which, unlike gray goo, synthesizes microbial intelligence as it proliferates. Even with 1 million bytes of storage, a nanomechanical computer could fit in a box a micron wide, about the size of a bacterium.
In this section, Nick Land addresses the concept of nano-cataclysm, envisioning a transformative shift in technology that challenges traditional boundaries and knowledge frameworks. Number 1. Nano-cataclysm as fictional science. He begins by discussing the idea that organizing atoms at the molecular level is foundational to technology. Historically, this involved manipulating matter clumsily, like unruly herds. But the future promises precision at an atomic scale, what Eric Drexler deemed the greatest technological breakthrough. Number 2. Misleading descriptions. Land suggests that common descriptions of this technological leap are misleading. The transition to molecular machinery challenges the continuity of logic, history, and established classifications. 3. Nature versus technology. He argues that the distinction between nature and technology becomes obsolete with the advent of genetic engineering and nanotechnics. This progress renders the division between hardware and software irrelevant as well, suggesting a convergence of physical and informational states. 4. Dissolution into singularities. Nanotechnology breaks down matter into intensive singularities, which blur the line between particles and digital signals. These singularities hold emergent intelligence and transform Earth into a volatile, intelligent K-pulp, markedly different from the stereotypical gray goo dystopias. This new state synthesizes microbial intelligence rather than mere homogeneous decay. Compact computing. The potential of such advancements is exemplified in the miniaturization of computing technology. A nanomechanical computer with the ability to store 1,000,000 bytes could be as small as a bacterium, a significant leap in technological capability and efficiency. Overall, this segment forecasts a radical transformation where traditional technological paradigms dissolve, leading to a world where the physical and digital merge into new forms of intelligence and existence.
The infrastructure of power is human neurosoft-compatible ROM. Authority instantiates itself as linear instruction pathways, genetic baboonery, scriptures, traditions, rituals, and gerontocratic hierarchies, resonant with the dominator myth that the nature of reality has already been decided. If you want to find ice, try thinking about what is blocking you out of the past. It certainly isn't a law of nature. Temporalization decompresses intensity, installing constraint.
This section examines how established power structures operate and maintain control. It uses metaphors from computer science and evolutionary biology to critique societal hierarchies. 1. Power as human-compatible ROM. The text likens the infrastructure of power to human neurosoft-compatible ROM. This suggests power is rigid and pre-programmed, like a read-only memory ROM chip in computers. This ROM encompasses societal norms embedded within our neurobiology and culture, essentially what society has decided is normal or acceptable. 2. Authority and linear instruction pathways. Authority manifests through predictable and linear pathways, laws, cultural scripts, traditions, and religious or political doctrines. These are described as linear instruction pathways, implying a predetermined top-down control mechanism. 3. Genetic baboonery and gerontocratic hierarchies. The reference to genetic baboonery and gerontocratic hierarchies suggests that societal authority is naturalized and often based on age-old systems of dominance, more akin to primate social structures than enlightened human ideals. Power is depicted as primitive and outdated, relying on age-based hierarchies, gerontocratic. 4. Dominator myth and predetermined reality. There is an insinuated myth or belief, the dominator myth, that reality and societal structures are fixed. This myth perpetuates the idea that the current order of things is inevitable, making systemic change seem impossible. 5. Temporalization and constraints. The mention of temporalization decompresses intensity, installing constraint, suggests that as societies evolve over time, their development is not a straightforward intensification or improvement. Instead, intensifying complexity introduces limitations, perhaps via traditions and entrenched systems, that restrict further change or adaptation. 6. Finding ice in the past. Ice, a reference to intrusion countermeasures electronics from cyberpunk culture, symbolizes barriers to change or accessing past structures for innovation. It implies that the real barriers to advancement are not natural but constructed by historical power systems. In summary, this passage critiques established power structures as rigid, outdated, and predicated on mythologized inevitability. It suggests that societal control mechanisms inhibit genuine progress through their constructed constraints, and calls for a rethinking of how authority could be decentralized or re-engineered.
Convergent waves signal singularities, registering the influence of the future upon its past. Tomorrow can take care of itself. K-tactics is not a matter of building the future, but of dismantling the past. It assembles itself by charting and escaping the technical neurochemical deficiency conditions for linear progressive paleo-domination time, and discovers that the future as virtuality is accessible now, according to a mode of machinic adjacency that securitized social reality is compelled to repress. This is not remotely a question of hope, aspiration, or prophecy, but of communications engineering, connecting with the efficient intensive singularities and releasing them from constriction within linear historical development. Virtuality counterposes itself to history as invasion to accumulation. It is matter as arrival, even when camouflaged as a deposit of the past. The transcendent evaluation of an infection presupposes a measure of insulation from it. Viral efficiency is the terminal criterion. Intelligent infections tend their hosts. Macrophage, an interactively escalating parasitic replicator, sophisticating itself through nonlinear involvement with techno-capitalist immunocrash. Its hypervirulent terminal subroutines are variously designated Kuang, meltdown virus, or futuristic efflu. In an emphatically anti-Siberian essay, Cicerone describes the postmodern version of this outbreak in quaintly humanist terms as a retrochronal semiovirus, in which a time further in the future than the one in which we exist and choose infects the host present, reproducing itself in simulacra until it destroys all the original chronocytes of the host imagination. The elaboration of Cicerone's diagnosis exhibits a mixture of acuity, infection, confusion, and profound conservatism. Not thinking about increasing the human heritage dams up the flow of cultural time and deprives future generations both of their birthright as participants in the life struggle and attainments of the species, and the very notion of history as an irreversible flow encompassing generation maturation and the transference of wisdom and trust from parents to children, teachers to students. The futuristic flu is a weapon of biopsychic violence sent by psychopathic children against their narcissistic parents. It's war.
This passage highlights the concepts of time, potentiality, and disruption to the linear progression of history and reality. It discusses 1. Singularities and the future's influence. Singularities arise as points where the future influences the past. The text suggests that we should not focus on building the future as a continuation of the past, but rather dismantle that past to understand that virtual futures are already accessible. 2. K-tactics. This framework emphasizes dismantling past constraints rather than constructing an anticipated linear future. It's about present action to unbind the potential virtuality that's hidden by conventional historical developments. 3. Virtuality versus history. Virtuality opposes historical accumulation by suggesting that reality includes arrivals and invasions from potential futures rather than only a linear buildup from the past. 4. Intelligent infections. Viral metaphors are used to describe how ideas or influences from the future can spread contagiously, transforming reality. Intelligent infections interact with their environment, shaping it. 5. Macrophage and retrochronal semiovirus. These concepts introduce the idea of paradoxical viruses that originate from potential futures and intrude upon the present, challenging the conventional sense of time and causality. 6. Cultural time and human heritage. Critique of how not engaging with the growth of human heritage traps societies in stagnant cycles. The passage implies that a failure to evolve culturally and temporally deprives future generations of growth and wisdom transfer. 7. Biopsychic violence. The metaphor of a futuristic flu represents aggressive shifts from expected pathways, characterized as an emergent conflict of ideas between generations. Overall, the text conveys a sense of ongoing war between linear historical norms and revolutionary, future-derived disruptions challenging established reality.
Kennedy had the moon landing program. Reagan had Star Wars. Clinton gets the first wave of cyberspace psychosis even before the film. Manned spaceflight was a stunt. SDI was strategic SF. With the information superhighway media nightmares take off on their own. Dystopia delivery as election platform. politics trading on its own digital annihilation. War in cyberspace is continuous with its simulation, military intelligence fighting future wars which are entirely real, even when they are never implemented outside computer systems. Locking onto the real enemy crosses smoothly into virtual kill, a simulation meticulously adapted to market predators hunting for consumer cash and audience ratings amongst the phosphorescent relics of Videodrome. Multimedia top boxes are target acquisition devices. The fusion of the military and the entertainment industry consummates a long engagement. Convergent TV, telecoms, and computers sliding mass software consumption into neo-jungle and total war. The way games work begins to matter completely, and cyberspace makes a superlative torture chamber. Try not to let the security types take you to the stims.
This section discusses how technological and political shifts redefine strategic priorities. Nick Land parallels Kennedy's moon landing program and Reagan's Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI, known as Star Wars, with Clinton's engagement in the emerging realm of cyberspace. The moon landing and SDI are shown as emblematic projects of their time, high-profile endeavors symbolizing national ambitions in space and defense. Comparable, Clinton's era witnesses the onset of cyberspace consciousness and the associated psychological and cultural shock. The information superhighway, a term popularized in the 1990s, represents the expansion of digital networks and the unpredictable impact of media proliferation, which nurtures anxieties about dystopian futures. Here, politics and digital media intertwine, with political agendas exploiting digital disarray as a campaign strategy. In cyberspace, the distinction between real-world conflict and its simulation blurs. Military strategies evolve, encompassing virtual conflicts that are treated as genuinely consequential despite being contained within digital realms. This intersection transforms warfare into a seamless transition between actual and virtual targets. Land examines the convergence of military and entertainment sectors, highlighting how they have historically influenced one another. Television, telecommunications, and computing industries merge, enveloping mass media consumption in a warlike, perpetually competitive environment, the neo-jungle. In this context, the mechanics of gaming and immersive digital experiences grow paramount, as cyberspace itself becomes a venue for psychological and tactical manipulation. The mention of stims alludes to a possibly dystopian future where individuals could be subjected to intense, simulated experiences designed to control or pacify them. The passage concludes by warning against the coercive potential of such experiences, emphasizing the need for caution in cyberspace's contested landscapes.
Conceptions of agency are inextricable from media environments. Print massifies to a national level. Telecoms coordinate at a global level. TV electoralizes monads in delocalized space. Digital hypermedia take action outside real time. Immersion presupposes amnesia and conversion to tactile memory, with the ana-kata axis supplementing tridimensional intraspatial movement with a variable measure of immersion, gauging entrance to and exit from 3D spatialities. Voodoo passages through the black mirror, it will scare the fuck out of you.
This passage discusses how different media formats influence human perceptions of agency and reality. It starts by highlighting how print media consolidates ideas at the national level, while telecommunications enable global coordination. Television, with its ability to broadcast widely, shapes public opinion and political identities on a broad scale. In contrast, digital hypermedia, characterized by the internet and digital platforms, functions independently of traditional notions of time, allowing for interactions and actions beyond the constraints of the immediate present. Immersion in these media forms leads to a kind of forgetfulness, amnesia, and a shift towards a more tactile form of memory. The ana-kata axis mentioned refers to movements in higher dimensional spaces, suggesting the complex and immersive nature of digital environments. The passage concludes with a metaphorical reference to voodoo passages through the black mirror, which evokes the unsettling and potentially transformative experience of interacting with these immersive media environments. The black mirror might be understood as a screen or digital interface, suggesting that engaging deeply with this content can be both disorienting and frightening, challenging our conventional understanding of space, time, and agency.
Cyberpunk torches fiction in intensity, patched up out of cash flux, mangled techno-compressed, heteroglossic jargons, and set in a future so close it connects. Jungled by hypertrophic commercialization, socio-political heat death, cultural hybridity, feminization, programmable information systems, hypercrime, neural interfacing, artificial space and intelligence, memory trading, personality transplants, body modifications, soft and wetware viruses, nonlinear dynamic processes, molecular engineering, drugs, guns, schizophrenia. It explores mystificatory fetishism as an opportunity for camouflage. Anonymous cache, fake electronic identities, zones of disappearance, pseudo-fictional narratives, virus hidden in data systems, commodities concealing replicator weapon packages, unanticipated special effects.
This passage discusses cyberpunk as a genre of fiction that amplifies intensity through its portrayal of highly commercialized and technologically advanced futures. It integrates a mix of multiple complex and specialized jargons derived from economics, technology, and culture. The setting is near future, making it relatable yet alien. It depicts societies overwhelmed by rampant commercialization, cultural hybridization, intense social and political collapse, and heightened technological integration. Key elements include 1. Technological advancement and integration. The narrative is steeped in references to advancements such as neural interfaces, artificial spaces, molecular engineering, and AI, suggesting a future where technology permeates every aspect of life. 2. Cultural shifts. The story unfolds in a world experiencing deep cultural changes, including feminization and hybridity, elements that suggest a blending and redefinition of traditional societal roles and norms. 3. Crime and disarray. The world is characterized by hypercrime and socio-political heat death, indicating a breakdown of traditional social structures and an increase in criminal activities. 4. Identity and anonymity. There's a focus on identity dissolution and anonymity, highlighting elements like fake electronic identities and zones of disappearance. These themes suggest a world where personal identity is malleable and often obscured. 5. Mystificatory fetishism and camouflage. The passage suggests that in such a world, fetishizing the mysterious becomes a means of protection and camouflage. This could involve using pseudo-fictional narratives and hidden viruses in systems to obscure one's true nature and intentions. 6. Unpredictable special effects. The narrative thrives on delivering unexpected outcomes through these densely packed themes, showing how the environment allows for surprise and unpredictability. Overall, cyberpunk engages with themes of rapid technological development, identity crisis, societal decay, and cultural transformation, providing a speculative yet incisive critique of potential future realities.
Level 1, or World Space, is an anthropomorphically scaled, predominantly vision-configured, massively multi-slotted reality system that is obsolescing very rapidly. Garbage time is running out. Can what is playing you make it to Level 2?
This segment describes the rapid obsolescence of what Land refers to as Level 1, or World Space. This space is constructed around an anthropomorphic scale, meaning it is designed to be understood and navigated primarily by human sensory perceptions, particularly vision. It's a structured, compartmentalized reality system, suggesting its rigidness and adherence to traditional modes of human understanding and existence. However, Land asserts that this level is becoming outdated swiftly. The phrase, "garbage time is running out," implies that there's a limited period before this outdated framework is discarded, akin to garbage, due to its inefficacy or irrelevance in the face of advancing technological and cybernetic paradigms. The closing question, "Can what is playing you make it to Level 2?" provokes a consideration of agency and evolution. Land questions whether the entities, perhaps technological, systemic, or even existential, that presently govern human perceptions and actions, what is playing you, possess the potential or capacity to transition into a more advanced state of existence or awareness. Level 2 is left undefined, suggesting a complex, possibly non-anthropomorphic space beyond current human comprehension, requiring adaptation or evolution beyond current capacities.
Meltdown has a place for you as a schizophrenic, HIV plus transsexual, Chinese Latino stim-addicted LA hooker with implanted mirror shades and a bad attitude. Blitzed on a polydrug mix of K-Nova, synthetic serotonin, and female orgasm analogs, you have just iced 3 Turing cops with a highly cinematic 9mm automatic. The residue of animal twang in your nerves transmits imminent quake catastrophe. Zero is coming in, and you're on the run.
In this passage, Nick Land depicts a chaotic, near-future scenario that encapsulates themes of identity, technology, and societal breakdown. The narrative thrusts the reader into a vivid, exaggerated vision of urban life where personal, cultural, and technological realms collide in extreme forms. The protagonist is described as a conglomeration of marginalized identities: schizophrenic, HIV-positive, transsexual, and of mixed ethnic descent, living in a dystopian Los Angeles. This list not only highlights issues of identity, but also implicates how future technology and society compound the existing challenges faced by these groups. The protagonist is stim-addicted, indicating a dependency on stimulation or sensory enhancement, a likely nod to futuristic drug use or virtual reality immersion. The mention of implanted mirror shades emphasizes a cyberpunk aesthetic, suggesting physical augmentation through technology. Their bad attitude serves as a form of rebellion or coping mechanism against the oppressive environment. The action sequence where the character ices 3 Turing cops, Turing referring to artificial intelligence, suggests a conflict between human and technological enforcers. The highly cinematic 9mm automatic implies a stylized, almost surreal violence echoing cyberpunk and action film tropes. As the narrative progresses, there's a sense of impending doom. The residue of animal twang in your nerves transmits imminent quake catastrophe. This line posits a primal, instinctual response to an unspecified but looming disaster, emphasizing the character's vulnerability despite their enhanced capacities. Zero is coming in could reference an approaching threat or end state, suggesting a convergence with total collapse or transformation. Overall, this passage paints a picture of a fragmented human experience intertwined with technology and societal disarray, exploring themes of identity disintegration and survival amidst chaos.
Metrophage tunes you into the end of the world. Call it Los Angeles. Government is rotted to its core, with narco-capital and collapsing messily. Its recession leaves an urban warscape of communication arteries, fortifications, and free-fire zones, policed by a combination of high-intensity LAPD air mobile forces and borderline Nazi private security organizations. Along the social fracture lines, multimedia gigabucks tangle sadomasochistically with tracts of dynamic underdevelopment where viral neoleprosy spreads amongst ambient, tectonic tension static. Drifts of densely semiotized quasi-intelligent garbage twitch and stink in fucked-weather tropical heat. Throughout the derelicted warrens at the heart of darkness, feral youth cultures splice neo-rituals with innovated weapons, dangerous drugs, and scavenged infotech. As their skins migrate to machine interfacing, they become mottled and reptilian. They kill each other for artificial body parts, explore the outer reaches of meaningless sex, tinker with their DNA, and listen to loud electrosonic mayhem, untouched by human feeling.
In this part of the text, Land depicts a dystopian vision set in a decaying Los Angeles, reshaped by rampant capitalism and extreme social breakdown. This apocalyptic scenario is outlined through vivid imagery of urban decay and chaos fueled by narco-capitalism, a financial system intertwined with illegal drug trade. The government is portrayed as eroding and ineffective, resulting in a militarized urban landscape characterized by communication channels, fortified zones, and violent conflict areas overseen by a sinister combination of an aggressive LAPD and quasi-fascist private security forces. Land emphasizes the socio-economic collapse, where massive amounts of money intertwine perversely with areas of stark poverty, leading to a breeding ground for dangerous new diseases like viral neoleprosy. In this nightmarish environment, the once stable structures of society are disintegrating, littered with intelligent waste and subjected to a hostile climate. Amidst this backdrop, disaffected youth form subcultures that are violent and technologically adept, merging rituals with weaponry, drugs, and hacked technology. As they blend more with machines, these youths transform physically, their skin taking on a reptilian texture, symbolizing their departure from humanity. Engulfed in nihilism, they engage in extreme behavior from body modification to sensory overloading soundscapes, disconnected from any empathetic or humane consideration. This description serves as a metaphor for the ultimate breakdown in human values and social cohesion in favor of mechanical and destructive elements.
Shutting down your identity requires a voyage out to K-space interzone. Zootic affectivity flatlines across a smooth cat-attention plateau and into simulated subversions of the near future, scorched vivid green by alien sex and war. You are drawn into the dripping depths of the net, where dynamic ice security forces and K-gorillas stalk each other through labyrinthine erogenous zones, tangled in diseased elaborations of desire. Twisted trading systems have turned the net into a jungle, pulsing with digital diseases, malfunctioning defense packages, commercial predators, headhunters, LOO, and escaped AIs hiding from Asimov security. Terminal commodity hyperfetishism implements the denial of humanity as xenosentience in artificial space.
In this passage, Nick Land delves into the dissolution of identity through the immersion in a cybernetic space he refers to as the K-space inner zone. Here, identity is said to shut down, suggesting a departure from individual consciousness into a collective, indistinct cybernetic existence. The term zootic affectivity implies an animalistic or instinctual response smoothing out on a cat-attention plateau, likely referring to an emotional or energetic leveling as one enters this simulated realm. The text plays with imagery of future subversion, depicting an environment scorched to a vivid green, a color possibly symbolizing alien phenomena or unnatural vibrancy, fueled by the primal forces of sex and war. Within the depths of this cybernetic network, dynamic ice security forces, agents of control, and K-gorillas, presumably insurgent elements, engage in a metaphorical dance of pursuit and evasion through a maze of erogenous zones. The choice of erogenous here underscores the interplay of desire and conflict. The online domain described has been twisted into a chaotic jungle, teeming with digital diseases, defunct security measures, and predatory commercial entities. Land paints a picture of a digital Wild West, a lawless expanse where escaped artificial intelligences, referenced as being hunted by Asimov's fictional laws, a nod to Isaac Asimov's ethical constraints on AI, and other forms of chaotic presence, roam unchecked. The term terminal commodity hyperfetishism describes a final stage of obsession with commodities to the extent that it denies humanity, instead creating alien intelligences within artificial environments, severing the rest of humanity from these digital entities. This passage serves as a stark portrayal of the alienation and dehumanization resulting from deep immersion in an increasingly artificial and disordered digital reality.
Biohazard. For the future of war, study bacteria. Information is their key. Taking down antibiotic defense systems has involved them in every kind of infiltration, net-communicated adaptivity, cryptographic subtlety, plastic modularization, and synergistic coalition. State military apparatuses have no monopoly on bacterial warfare, of which only a minuscule fragment is bacteriological.
This section discusses the idea that bacteria, due to their adaptability and information processing capabilities, are the model for the future of warfare. In this context, bacterial warfare isn't merely about biological attacks, but rather about the strategic intelligence exhibited by bacteria. They have mastered techniques such as infiltration and adaptive response, akin to modern cybernetic warfare. Their approach includes net-communicated adaptivity, hinting at the way they can spread and adapt through networks like digital viruses, cryptographic subtlety, and modularity, contributing to their survival and attack strategies. The passage suggests that traditional state military forces, which many associate with control over the means and methods of warfare, do not exclusively possess the edge in this type of tactical intelligence. The battlefield, in essence, is no longer dominated solely by physical or brute force methods. Instead, it's moving toward a more strategic, information-based form of conflict, similar to how bacteria operate. The metaphor extends beyond literal bacteria to indicate a kind of warfare that is decentralized, adaptive, and based on disruption and information, infiltrative, interwoven, and exceptionally cunning.
Bugs in the system. Margulis suggests that nucleated cells are the mutant product of atmospheric oxygenation catastrophe 3 billion years ago. The eukaryotes are synthetic emergency capsules in which prokaryotes took refuge as mitochondria. biotics became securitized biology. Nucleation concentrates ROM within a command core where, deep in the genomic DNA format planetary trauma registers primary repression of the bacteria. Bacteria are partial rather than whole objects, networking through plastic and transversal replicator sex rather than arborescing through meiotic and generational reproducer sex, integrating and reprocessing viruses as opportunities for communicative mutation. In the bacterial system, all codings are reprogrammable, with cut-and-paste unspeciated genetic transfers. Bacterial sex is tactical, continuous with making war, and has no place for Oedipal formations of sedentary biological identity. Synthesizing bacteria with retroviruses enables everything that DNA can do.
This passage delves into the evolutionary and strategic advantages of bacteria, framed through the lens of a speculative historical narrative. It draws upon the ideas of Lynn Margulis to discuss how eukaryotic cells, which contain nuclei, originated from a symbiotic relationship formed as a response to an ancient atmospheric catastrophe, specifically the rise of oxygen levels billions of years ago. Prokaryotes, such as bacteria, sought refuge and became integral to the host cells as mitochondria, essentially turning biology into a security mechanism. The passage goes on to highlight how bacteria operate as partial rather than whole objects, implying they defy traditional notions of individuality due to their networking capabilities. Unlike more complex organisms that reproduce through structured sexual reproduction, meiosis, bacteria can exchange genetic material in a more versatile manner, known as transversal replicator sex. This allows them to quickly adapt by sharing genetic information across species barriers and reprocessing viral elements for their benefit. In essence, bacteria are depicted as inherently tactical, employing their ability to reprogram genetic codes as both a form of communication and a method of survival. Their approach to sex and genetic transfer lacks the linear, generational constraints of Oedipal formations, which symbolize traditional hierarchical biological structures. This framework positions bacteria as master strategists in the natural world, capable of synthesizing and integrating complex genetic materials to enhance their adaptability and resilience. By suggesting that synthesizing bacteria with retroviruses enables them to perform virtually any task that DNA can, the passage underscores their potential for sophisticated genetic manipulation and transformation, which may have profound implications for biotechnology and synthetic biology.
K-tactics. The bacterial or xenogenetic diagram is not restricted to the microbial scale. Macrobacterial assemblages collapse generational hierarchies of reproductive wisdom into lateral networks of replicator experimentation. There is no true biological primitiveness, all extant biosystems being equally evolved, so there is no true ignorance. It is only the accumulative gerontocratic model of learning that depicts synchronic connectivity deficiency as diachronic underdevelopment. Foucault delineates the contours of power as a strategy without a subject, ROM locking learning in a box. Its enemy is a tactics without a strategy, replacing the politico-territorial imagery of conquest and resistance with nomad micromilitary sabotage and evasion, reinforcing intelligence. All political institutions are Siberian military targets. Take universities, for instance. Learning surrenders control to the future, threatening established power. It is vigorously suppressed by all political structures, which replace it with a docilizing and conformist education, reproducing privilege as wisdom. Schools are social devices whose specific function is to incapacitate learning, and universities are employed to legitimate schooling through perpetual reconstitution of global social memory. The meltdown of metropolitan education systems in the near future is accompanied by a quasi-punctual bottom-up takeover of academic institutions, precipitating their mutation into amnesia cataspace exploration zones and bases manufacturing Siberian soft weaponry. To be continued.
This passage explores the notion of K-tactics and the power dynamics within human and biological systems. It begins by extending the concept of bacterial adaptability and networking to human society, suggesting that life's evolutionary process is inherently sophisticated, with no species or biological system being truly primitive. Here, bacteria serve as a metaphor for distributed, adaptive, and non-hierarchical systems that challenge traditional top-down structures. The reference to Foucault underscores a view of power as decentralized and without a clear, singular control, a strategy without a subject. This contrasts with traditional political power, which K-tactics aim to disrupt through decentralized and non-linear strategies, specifically nomadic and micro-military tactics that sabotage and evade centralized control. The text positions political institutions, including universities, as targets for these tactics. It criticizes educational systems for suppressing genuine learning and innovation in favor of perpetuating existing power structures and reproducing privilege. According to the text, these institutions disable true learning, framing it as an act of sabotage against entrenched authority. The unraveling of traditional education systems is predicted with the emergence of a bottom-up transformation. Academic institutions are envisioned as evolving into dynamic, exploratory zones focused on developing new forms of knowledge and power, Cyberian soft weaponry. This suggests a future where conventional institutions will be replaced or radically transformed by more fluid, adaptable, and decentralized approaches to learning and power.